Harrison Price for Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Presentation of Bet365. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. World log rolling champion Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. We got a big show today.
We do.
Really, really big show. That media availability yesterday with new Canucks general manager Ryan Johnson, I think, was illuminating on a number of fronts. So let's dig into it.
We tell people to stay and listen to the entirety or view the entirety of the show. Today, I mean it. Watch the whole damn show. It is a very good show. Our guests today are magnifique. Menu coming up in just a second.
Thank you for that rousing endorsement, Blake.
I think it's a good show.
I thought you were going to say something about the final segment and right at the end that there was something in the dying seconds of the show.
Well, the rest of the sports are, of course, covered there, too.
That's good, too.
Yeah. Watch it all.
Okay. The daily poll question. Should the Canucks even bother to interview head coaching candidates other than Manny Malhotra? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Before we get there, let's hear from the aforementioned Ryan Johnson, because I think there was a clue yesterday in his media availability. Here's Johnson on casting a wide net.
I don't think I've got an expectation of how big that net needs to be cast. I like I said, I don't want to be ignorant to you guys or to anybody say I'm not going to have a serious conversation with Manny. That's just the truth of it. I think those discussions may determine, how big that net is cast. But I'm not ruling out anything. But I've got to go through the initial steps here.
So look, I think it's pretty obvious, and Ryan Johnson had done an interview with Chris Faber on the Canucks Insider in-house media where he talked about the two of them and their journey together. I think it's pretty clear that Manny Malhotra is Ryan Johnson's ride or die and preferred choice as the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. I think the process from here involves, do the Sedins twins want to talk to anybody else? Does the owner want to talk to anybody else? And do the Canucks see value in, much like they did with their general manager search, going out and getting counterintelligence on their club from potential coaching candidates? Now, there's an argument here you'd be wasting everybody's time.
And time is of the essence.
And I completely understand that, and this guy's going to take on time is of the essence. And I get that. Maybe also a little of goodwill is at stake here too. Like if other candidates view it as a farce, a sham, if other candidates know
wasting their time.
Well that they're being interviewed for the sake of counterintelligence and nothing more than counterintelligence, then maybe that isn't the most professional thing to do, or that is certainly not something that gets you in the good graces of potential coaches and agents down the line. I can hear all that, but I voted yes. I mean, I think you should interview at least a couple other people, Blake. Like, I think you have time for that, no?
Yeah, I think you do. It's 5 weeks to the draft. The Canucks have got and Ryan Johnson went over all the different departments that need to be looked at, inspected, fortified in some cases, renewed in other cases for people that are up for their contracts, changed in other cases, outright changed. And then you have to search for those replacements. So there's a lot of work to do. And I think you'd rather that most of that dust, you don't need the medical team in for the draft. that's one for maybe the couple weeks after the draft.
Well,
something
unless
like that.
at the combine, you may want to have your medical people get a handle on the injuries and ailments that these prospects are dealing with. Like
Potentially, yeah.
You do want to know if someone's got something degenerative.
Well,
or if someone...
doctors and medical trainers are two different departments, so you could, depending on what. Anyhow, there's a lot of work to be done, and you've got to prioritize what's what. Here's what I would do. Here's how I would conduct it. I would talk to pretty much everybody in hockey ops. I would do a reply all on the email server.
Always dangerous if you're in a big company.
To scouts, to the AGMs, to the analytics department. And I would say, everybody is welcome to feedback on this. If you have an impassioned idea for somebody that we should look at for the next head coach, send it my way. I want to see it.
Fair.
And I will weed through the impassioned ideas and determine if there's anybody else we need to interview. And from that, maybe you get 2 interviews. Maybe there's 2 legitimate guys you're like, that is a really good idea. I like what that guy just brought to the table. I'm going to talk to that guy.
So my light bulb on this is go interview 2 other coaches that were on the front ends of rebuilds and ask about their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, and we will get into this on the Malhotra front as his candidacy goes along, as the week and days go along. Unless you think that this is going to be tidily wrapped by the end of the week. Like, do you think there's a world where Manny Malhotra is at a press conference as the next head coach of the Canucks by Friday?
I mean, they said they were going to take some time to think about Foote, and they really just took the long weekend. They took, next business day, essentially, they were at it. So
to me, that was a tap-in decision. This could be a tap-in decision for them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if they view it as a tap-in, if they don't want to go through the exercise, then I think there is an avenue in which there's a Friday news conference, and we know they love Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it is possible. I'm not sold that that's what's happening, but I think it's possible.
But no, my idea would be go talk to coaches who have served on the front end.
Does anybody leap to mind?
Dallas Eakins or Greg Cronin in Anaheim might be useful.
Well, both of those guys have interesting reputations.
Apparently, Eakins may get an interview in Toronto.
I had a great chat with Eakins at the Spengler this year. He's in Germany, and
Dallas a really smart guy.
Very smart guy. Very
smart guy.
And he was super personable. I think he's learned a lot in his travels since that.
Yep.
So I think and this is what I was going to say to you. Somebody that's had success building, or do you need somebody that just may have taken something away from that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those who took their lumps, basically, in the early part of a rebuild. I do wonder whether it behooves you to talk to Jeremy Colton, who was there on the front end of a Blackhawks rebuild. A rebuild that is still ongoing. I mean, we cite Anaheim as now a successful rebuild. They made the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I would love to talk to Marty St. Louis, but he has bigger fish to fry right now. And, of course, he still has a job because he has survived through the rough years of a rebuild. But, talk to guys who have had the experience of taking on the heavy lift, the early stages of a rebuild, what they felt was important going in, what they felt was important coming out, mistakes they made, things they would do differently. David Quinn might be interesting with his experience in San Jose, and of course also coached the Rangers. Because here's the thing. Circling back to Manny.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all talking like it's Manny Malhotra's job, right? And I do think the general manager absolutely wants to hire Manny Malhotra. Does Manny want this? He's never been an NHL head coach before. There's only 32 of these jobs he knows the people he would be working for, and can't imagine there would be many out there where he would have better rapport or closer personal relations than Ryan Johnson and the Twins.
Mm-hmm.
That all said, Manny knows his coaching record is going to take a kicking off the hop. You're going to win 35, 40% of your games, something like that.
Yep.
And, of course, how many coaches begin a rebuild and see the other side of the rainbow? St. Louis is one, but we just gave you four other examples in 3 other markets of guys who didn't come close to seeing the pot of gold.
Matt, the key to surviving is exactly what happened in Montreal, though.
Players developed.
Well, but you need a little fruit from the labor, but you also need patience in the people above the coach that know what the exercise is and that it isn't wins and losses. So many of the quote-unquote rebuilds and the coaches that started them had unrealistic expectations on how fast that rebuild should start to pay dividends in the win-loss columns. And they got fired for wins and losses in a lot of ways. So you have to go into it eyes wide open and with patience. And Marty St. Louis was allowed to miss the playoffs, was allowed to lose some games. And really, I mean, it was a rebuild to a T in terms of timeliness. I think every fan base would happily sign up for the arc of the – and even if the Habs had lost in this last round and lost in the second round, I still think most fans would be like, hell yeah, 3 years out, 1 year of a first-round loss, and then we win a playoff series. I think every fan base would stand up for that rebuild, but particularly this Vancouver one that it called for a rebuild forever and now finally seemed to have it. So I think if you've got an objectively good coach and he still takes it on the chin here for the first few seasons, I think he's got a chance to survive.
I think player development is key. I think Marty St. Louis, who, and I'll say it again, like I could not have been more wrong about that. I was mayor of Wrongville wrong. I thought it was an absolute joke. I'm like, you're kidding me. They're hiring a guy who has never coached above the midget level? And look, lived in Montreal, born there, understand probably better than a lot of I know this is oft criticized outside of the province of Quebec. I do understand why they require a French-speaking head coach. So I understood their pool was smaller.
Limits the talent, yeah.
But I thought they just got wowed by a former star player with success, both individual and team.
Yeah, it did.
Who was a Francophone and dazzled in an interview with a first-time general manager who had come from the agent side in Kent Hughes. I thought it had disaster written all over it. But one of the things that Marty St. Louis did and did so very well, he developed Cole Caulfield, as it turns out, into a 50-goal scorer. He developed Juraj Slafkovsky, as it turns out, to one of the best and still burgeoning power forwards in the game. He developed Nick Suzuki into a Canadian Olympian and one of the best, if not the best, two-way centers
from a prospect that both had high upside but also bust potential as well.
Slafkovsky
Slafkovsky
was really wobbling there a couple times. So I think what Marty St. Louis understood was he wasn't going to be judged on wins and losses in the early going. He was going to be judged on the improvement of individual players and particularly high draft picks, young players, the guys that management, his bosses, viewed as the future franchise pillars. And he did amazing work there. And he's gone even beyond because even the culture now and the all for one for all and the sum of the parts and the empowerment of players all of it has taken off in Montreal.
And Matt, you might be able to say that Manny Malhotra's already got a head start on that. Like
to a degree.
Like Linus Karlsson just got his third point a minute ago here at the World Hockey Championships. Like Linus Karlsson, we had left for dead as a prospect when he was acquired, and look at what he's turned into. And there are other examples. Max Sassen's at the World Hockey Championships. Like there are examples already of development under the tutelage of Manny Malhotra.
DPD would be on that list. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ratu. So, yes. And of course, some of these Canucks prospects stalled.
Plateaued without him. Yes.
That's right. So anyways, vote on the poll, secure some price accent YouTube channels. Should the Canucks even bother interviewing head coaching candidates other than Manny Malhotra? Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. All roads lead to Abbotsford, all signs point to Manny Malhotra. There is a heavy front runner to be the next Canucks head coach. It is a former Canucks player, and it is, of course, the head coach of their Abbotsford farm team, the still reigning Calder Cup champions. GM Ryan Johnson saying he wanted a new voice to lead this next era of the franchise, and explaining his move to blow out Adam Foote and the entirety of Foote's staff, minus the goaltending coach. We'll get there in a minute. Johnson says he wants a full-throated conversation with Malhotra before deciding if he needs a broader search. And I thought Ryan Johnson gave a couple of incredibly good answers last week at the introductory press conference. I thought he gave another banger yesterday with regards to Manny and his coaching medal. Because it would have been easy to point to a banner, a ring, a trophy, and say, hey, look at this. He didn't do that. He pointed to this past season of the Abbotsford Canucks. Take a listen.
Well, I've said this, is that he showed the type of coach and person he is, not by winning a championship. It was navigating what he did last season with all the injuries, and we just never had a full team on the ice. But to see that when you can rely on the foundation of the consistent environment and the coaching through the worst of times and really continue to propel players forward, even though the wins and losses aren't there, it tells you a lot about him. And that's what I said, not just Manny, but that entire staff showed that they're champions based off of not the year before, of what they did last year and what people around them took out of a pretty tough season.
Yeah, to say the least. They went from Calder Cup champions. They just fought their way out of the basement of their division towards the end of the year. And our old friend Grady Sass has done the math here, complete with graphic. 52 players, including the goaltenders, played for Abbotsford.
I think I read that it's a record. I think I read that it's a franchise record anyhow.
Mike, do you have the scroll that's attached to Grady's tweet there? I mean, it's unbelievable. Like you
keep scrolling.
It's a forever scroll.
Yeah.
Of stats of guys who actually were in the uniform this year.
That seems to have got lost.
Okay, you got roster turnover. You had call-ups, right? You had injuries.
Injuries galore.
Galore.
Yeah. And it had a trickle down. Like the ECHL team then got pilfered, and so they had the same issue. Like it was a debacle.
Now, many are praising Johnson and the Twins for being decisive on the call to relieve Foote and his staff, myself included. To me, it was a tap-in decision that was not NHL-worthy coaching last year, not the head coach or on the assistant side. But I think we also have to ask the question, was the decisiveness a result of outside interest in Manny? Now, Johnson said no team had yet reached out for permission to talk to Malhotra. And, of course, Rutherford said, until we get everything sorted, there will be no permissions granted. And that's appropriate. That's fair. And if the Twins and Johnson are just going along with that mantra, they'd have every right to. That's you've got to look after your own house first, make all your decisions before you're going to grant permissions around the league. But what Johnson said yesterday doesn't mean a request isn't coming. So is this the new front office getting ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs' interest in Manny? We have had many people say John Chayka, Matt Sundin would be interested in having the conversation with Manny Malhotra, who, of course, also has history in the Leafs organization as a part of that bench.
And so they know full well what he brings to the table. They've experienced him not only as a player, watching him then, but they've experienced him post-playing days in their staff. They know what they're getting themselves into. So they almost don't need an interview. They just hire him on the spot.
If there's two places that I think would feel good about bringing Manny in to talk to him, but doing a shorter interview with him than you would
5
with other
minutes.
candidates,
Gotcha.
I think it's the Leafs. I think it's the Canucks. Johnson was also asked about the Caleb Malhotra dynamic. Manny's son, the Brantford Bulldogs centerman, for some as high as the second-ranked player in this draft, and someone who is squarely in the Canucks' sights with the third overall pick. We're going to play what Johnson had to say. We'll come back and discuss. We asked this on our poll question yesterday about the father-son dynamic of hiring Manny and then staring down the barrel of, do you draft his son? Here's RJ.
Well, it's hard to be ignorant of an internal candidate that we obviously have, so I'm not going to deflect that. Manny has shown his ability to develop young players, to build a connection, and obviously win a championship with a very young group. So won't be ignorant to the fact that I am going to speak with him, sit down with him, and talk about the future. But as far as his son or the draft, I'm in no position to change or make decisions based off one or the other. There will be no sacrifice because of a father-son relationship, I would say. The first thing in front of me right now is to find the next head coach for this organization, and that'll be the priority.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Again,
Okay, explain that last part to me, because I thought that was a little murky.
he means I can't cross a bridge that I don't even know exists. I'm crossing the bridge that's in front of me right now.
No.
And
Wrong answer.
Oh, I disagree.
No, I wholeheartedly disagree. You have to go through the exercise. It is absolutely incumbent on you in that interview with Malhotra to ask him about Caleb, whether he'd feel comfortable coaching Caleb, whether he thinks that's a distraction or an explosive situation in the dressing room. You've got to ask him the bias question, both sides of it. Because Manny has an interest in developing Vancouver Canucks players and the Vancouver Canucks team if he's the coach. But he's also a dad. And he's got interest in seeing Caleb Malhotra be as good an NHL player and get as much opportunity as possible. And I think you also have to ask the flip side of, would you be harder on him because he's your son, because you have to prove something to the other 22 men in that room?
It's free information, so you're fine to ask, but
you have to no. These are connected decisions, Blake. Go ahead.
My point is, if they know that Caleb Malhotra is 5th on their draft list, it's a moot point. Like, if they know that, they can't really draw a line as to how they acquire Caleb Malhotra, because as it stands now, it's just not going to happen. Like, we're not drafting Caleb Malhotra.
If he's, well, there could be trade down opportunities on the draft floor.
Those are so remote again.
I understand that, Blake, but you have to be
That's fine.
nimble
You can ask
and
the
agile.
question. You can ask the questions of it in the interview, but
possibilities. Henrik and Daniel, when they talked in their opening remarks at the press conference about what kind of decision-making and what kind of organization they were going to have going forward, used 3 words: connected, committed, purpose. You cannot view it as 2 independent decisions if you're hiring Manny. You can't just say, oh, well, we hired the best coach available, and now we're going to draft the best player available, and they're both from the Malhotra family. No, that's not connected.
My point is if he sees it as a 1% chance of coming to fruition, yes, you can ask all those questions and dot the I's and cross the T's in the interview process, but it doesn't behoove him to share that with the media right now and to be put on that hook when he sees it as the remotest of possibilities. So he just did
You're putting words in his mouth, but yes, I understand what you're saying. He may well know that Todd Harvey and the scouts have Malhotra at 6 or 9 or something like that. But like all the intel to this moment has been the Canucks have been really focused on Caleb Malhotra, have sent many different members of the front office to go personally scout Caleb Malhotra. Even Patrick Alvin, before he got fired, was personally scouting Caleb Malhotra. We've heard Todd Harvey. We've heard Cami Granato. We have heard a number of the Canucks scouts and front office members have had their own eyes on Caleb Malhotra.
He authored a great story.
Elliot Friedman yesterday talking about he thinks they are absolutely locked on Caleb Malhotra as one of the potential guys to select at number 3.
We'll see what happens. I think that they probably have a pretty good handle as to what they expect to happen at the number 3 position. Mm-hmm. And if they just don't think, they could think super highly. Like if Caleb Malhotra is 4th on their board, Matt, like that's a player that you absolutely love. Mm-hmm. But if you just can't envision a reason why you'd end up there, then you're probably going to say, like, we'll cross the bridge when we get to it. But I'm not going to tell you right.
Just so long as they're thinking about both situations in concert. That is my point.
I am sure they are.
I hope so.
Based on everything we've heard so far,
hope so.
I think
if they hire Manny and they draft Caleb and they come out on draft night and say, he was the best player on our board, no brainer for us. It's like, okay. You're inviting a very odd and potentially combustible dynamic into a dressing room that has had very odd and most combustible dynamics in the past. For me, that would not be one of the first pillars I would want to put in the ground in a rebuild.
But this is just not a tier in the draft where there's a reason to staunchly believe that Caleb Malhotra is the only option for you right now.
No, that's the thing.
So,
but you also don't want to be passing over the best player on your board for the sake of a coach. We've had that conversation too. Players matter more than coaches. Players last longer than coaches. Anyways, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Let's move on.
Today was a pivotal day for me, Matt. With our two guests in particular, today was a pivotal day. Mm-hmm. Caleb Malhotra is no longer an option for me at number 3.
Okay.
Today I've moved on.
Johnson also outlined what he's looking for in his new coach. Here's RJ on the qualities of the new bench boss.
Consistency, patience, the ability to connect with a young group and realize that we can't blanket players, that they each have their own path, their own journeys that you got to be attentive to. So those are just some obviously key components out of the gate that I always look for in a coach, regardless of where the state of the team is at.
That was a great answer. And spoke to what we were talking about, developing young players. And in fact, Johnson's talked a lot about that in just 2 media sessions to date. We're going to get on to the rest of the front office here and the coaching staff in a moment. First, Blake is going to tell you why Yellow Dog or Neighborhood is the most delicious beer you could possibly drink.
Well, there's no reason other than it just is. Just go taste it. And in fact, we want you to taste a bunch of them. So how about a mix box?
Love it.
Yesterday, they released the box of tricks. It's a new trick up their sleeve. Tasty, hoppy, refreshing mix pack. You can choose between 4 retro brews from the Yellow Dog Vault, the Rough West Coast IPA. You got the Tug of War New Zealand IPA, the Turbo Wolf Sour IPA, and the Sit and Stay ISA. Show off your skills and enjoy a mix of fresh and hoppy brews. It's out, the box of tricks.
Okay. So we are getting more clarity on the composition of what a Sedin Johnson administration is going to look like. And of course, master aggregator and interpreter sometimes. Taj has laid it out. Based on all the reporting and rumors, ownership wanted gold, ownership wanted to keep Foote, ownership wanted some AGMs gone and changes in scouting. Complete opposite has happened in all those situations. He says, safe to say Sedins now have complete control for now.
Yeah.
And Henrik told 32 Thoughts, quote, if they said we had to win tomorrow, they meaning ownership, that wasn't something we could have supported or done a good job of. So pretty clear. Sedin's had some leverage here. What were the Sedin marching orders, if you will, to ownership? It's got to be a full-scale rebuild, done on an organic timeline, not rushed. And number two, we want to work with Ryan Johnson, not Evan Gold. Completely understand both those positions from Hank and Danny, and that's the way it went down. For many watching the Canucks, that is glass half full, and I completely understand. They have been able to hold the owner's impulses of fast track at bay throughout the process and the conversations of taking the president's job. And they have been able to get their collaborator of choice in Ryan Johnson. But there are many Canucks fans, and I've heard from some of them on text online, for whom this is glass half empty. For those hoping the quote-unquote nerd would join the senior management team, we heard a lot of that, right? When they got rid of Alvin and then Rutherford announced he was going to step down. Go hire a nerd. Go hire a Sonny Meta. Well, it doesn't sound like the quintessential nerd. GM or AGM is coming, albeit there is a replacement AGM coming for
There is one more.
Abbotsford. Yep. Now, they don't tend to have the sort of nerd academic profile, lawyer, statistician. They don't tend to have that profile. Doesn't mean you can't hire someone like that to run Abbotsford, but presuming that's not the case, you're not going to have that quintessential analytics at the AGM level, at least as of right now, to the best of our knowledge. Ryan Johnson gave an impassioned case for keeping the two existing assistant general managers yesterday, both Emily Castengay, who heads up the silo of CBA, cap, contract negotiations, and Cami Granato, who heads up the scouting silo. Johnson called them a big part of this group and a big part of his journey and maturation to the GM's chair.
I do wonder, Matt, if we see some of these job descriptions change. I'm not reporting this. I'm merely suggesting that one of those two women maybe becomes the AGM in charge of the AHL team, and then they bring in somebody more analytically driven, like an Evan Gold, not Evan Gold, but an Evan Gold type.
Yeah. And look, when Jim Rutherford hired both Granato and Castengay, I think learning curves were to be expected. Cami had, was it 1 year of experience with the Kraken?
Yeah.
Castengay came straight out of the agency side of things. I understand they needed to bring in outside help for Castengay with the salary cap in the early going, and hey, fair enough. Complex. Can't say I have particularly loved the Canucks contract negotiation work. Now, don't know how much of that was Rutherford and Alvin. Needless to say, Kevin Lankinen and his agent got over on the Vancouver Canucks. Particularly didn't like what happened with Pius Suter last year and that Rutherford line about, we were supposed to circle back on Suter, and I'm not sure what happened there. Well, what happened there is you didn't re-sign a player who would have stemmed the bleeding when you were absolutely destitute at center ice early in the season, having lost
Suter,
Hedel
not,
and
Suter, not Kempf, basically.
Blue
You would
Crew.
have had Pius Suter instead of David Kempf.
Well, but, and I know Suter didn't have a particularly great year, but you can't tell me he wouldn't have been better than what you were playing at center ice.
Yeah.
Well, especially during the injuries, but I would argue for most of the year anyways, regardless, even at full health.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you were trying to win last year. You were trying to keep Quinn Hughes, and you really kicked the Pius Suter file. So you could bring on Evander Kane, which was... Now, Aiden Fox's analytics department is likely to expand. That was one of the learnings from all the interviews they did with 18 or so candidates for the GM's job. I think that's appropriate. And Todd Harvey was given a vote of confidence. And for many, including the two guys here, deservedly so. Like, we think the amateur scouting department made significant strides in the Rutherford Alvin regime. They got players beyond the first round for the first time in like forever, right?
Yeah, without a terrible, influx of bounty. Like the sample size still wasn't huge.
Right.
Their batting average is pretty
Right.
good.
So here's Johnson on Todd Harvey.
I have the utmost respect for Todd Harvey, how he's led his group. He's really evolved as a leader over the years and been challenged but he's been able to build this group and make some changes where he felt needed. But nobody works harder than Todd. He commands the room. He's empowered his staff, and if you really strike it down to some of the picks and the Muellers and the DPDs, Kudratsevs, and these guys have done a fantastic job of finding players late, middle to late rounds, and we haven't had an opportunity to pick up in the draft, but we will this year, and so that's exciting for those guys. They're excited. They've done the work, and we're looking forward to the next 6 weeks.
Hey, fair enough. Good answer. But if we take it all in totality, you're retaining 2 of your 3 AGMs, and the only reason the other one is not being retained is because he's being promoted. You're retaining your head of analytics. You're retaining your director of amateur scouting. For those who wondered about loyalty and whether RJ and the Twins have the mettle to cut bait with personal relationships, that's yet to be proven.
Well, the coach and 3 assistants is...
Yeah, but those are Rutherford Alvin guys. They fired Rutherford Alvin guys. The people they work more closely with have been retained.
But those are still all Rutherford Alvin people.
To a degree.
Well, they're hired by those guys.
Granado and Kassengay were.
Yes.
Did Harvey and Fox not predate? I believe they predated. I stand to be corrected there, but anyways. Like this Canucks fan, if we can bring this tweet up. Stephen King, and Stephen, look forward to your next novel. Feels like the Canucks have gone from a regime of this is what we did when we won the Cup in Pittsburgh to this is our team from 2011 when we came close regime. And if Manny is the head coach and you have Manny, RJ, and the Twins, yeah, I get it. Johnson had moved on, but I understand.
The former players thing works, though. Joe Sakic's proven it. It's not a rule. It's not a rule that if you go back to the wall. What I'm saying, it's not a rule that you can't either, right? It's not a rule that because these players were players in your organization, it won't work out. No, there's plenty of examples where that has. So I don't think we can just say this way works, this way doesn't. They've gone with green GMs and green coaches and it hasn't worked. They've gone with savvy veteran guys now. That didn't work. Like, I don't know that we can just look at the type of people that have been hired and say that type doesn't work. That we've seen it all here. None of it's worked. So
I think you're quite right.
I think we just have to look at the people themselves, and in particular guys like Harvey and the AGMs. There is no concrete evidence that any of those people haven't done their job. And I think you can make the argument that Alvin and Rutherford, particularly Rutherford, became so hands-on that it maybe sucked the air and the decision-making away from everybody else to the point where they didn't make any decisions.
Could very well be. I think Jimmy certainly, when the franchise started to teeter in Miller v. Pettersson, put both hands back on the wheel. And yes, Harvey and Fox do predate the Rutherford-Alvin regime. Now, one dangling item is the future of Ian Clark, who has 1 year remaining on his deal, but may well have a suitor in New Jersey, where they cut bait with a goalie coach yesterday. Apparently there's a relationship between the new GM, Sonny Mehta, and Ian Clark dating back to their days in Florida. So you do wonder, was that move made in Jersey for the purposes of hiring Ian Clark? Marco Terranius, who is the goaltending coach right now, because remember, Ian is no longer goaltending coach or director of goaltending. He's merely just a scout after Rutherford effectively demoted him. Terranius is out of contract, so that's why he wasn't a part of the release yesterday. The expectation is that he will continue as the goaltending coach. Johnson's going to keep him as well.
One of the items on the to-do list.
Right. Where does that leave Ian Clark? Ryan Johnson was asked about that yesterday. Here's RJ.
Well, Ian Clark has done a great job in so many aspects of the organization. I rely on him with a lot of the development of our already drafted or signed goalies. He does a great job communicating with Marco and Justin. He's done a great job of the overall overview when he had to step back from the day-to-day just because of the body and the injuries. But so I've relied on him in so many different ways and will continue to do so.
Continue to do so. It's great news. But, of course, Ian gets a say in this, too.
Yeah, you're allowed to leave for promotions, and if he gets a full-time, higher
Goaltending
ranking
coach,
job.
director of goaltending, I think they both qualify, right?
I do wonder how much, if he is physically limited now, Ian, because of his own injuries, I do wonder how intensely he can be a goalie coach now anyway. But.
For some, you may have some head coaches or GMs who say, no, I don't care about his knees, I care about his eyes.
Yeah.
If he wants to sit on the bench and have somebody actually go through the drills, that is more important to me than his ability to skate at this stage. And frankly, that's how I'd approach it. Mm-hmm. Like I'm hiring his eyes and his brain more so than his knees, because the one thing we know about Ian, like really good eyes, really good brain.
Well, was it Marty St. Louis? I was listening to the radio. He was asked about in Game 6, I believe, about whether or not he was thinking about pulling the goalie.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great answer.
And he said, I looked at my assistant that he called up, and he said, I don't have the ability to see if something's wrong or if it's just if it was screens in front. And the goalie coach radioed down and said, do not take him out. He's good. And they just said, okay.
It was another fantastic answer, and I think feather in St. Louis' cap that he basically admitted, I know what I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in the subtle movements of a goaltender. It was Trevor Letowski, the assistant coach, radioed up. Goaltending coach said, no, he's good. Left him in.
Yep.
We got a couple of super chats I want to get to here. Those of you on YouTube, the super chat button always available to you. You can hit it, make your donation, have proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. We will ensure to get it on the program. Mike, can we start with the second one on the draft? We have two super chats today.
It's it's Sam from Campbell River.
Oh, okay.
The new CBA has triggered the cancellation of training.
Okay. That's not the one I want to start with.
Oh, you want to start the other one? Okay.
The other one? The drafting one? Just because it was a little... Yes, here we go. Tiger. Canucks are drafting Ivar. Caleb would be great consolation prize, but based on the smile from RJ in the press conference when asked about the draft. Yeah, Tiger, I don't know how you could know that right now. Like, even if all your intel is, no, San Jose wants a defenseman, you don't know that somebody isn't going to call San Jose and trade up, give them an offer they can't refuse to trade up to number 2. There's a lot of defensemen there too, right? Karls, Reed, Rudolph for some, Verhoff for others, Smits. So, yeah, like I don't think it behooves Ryan Johnson or anyone in the Canucks organization to think, oh, yeah, we know exactly how it's going down, number one and number two.
No, I think I'm close to what he's saying, though, Tiger, that I think they feel confident enough that it won't be Caleb Malhotra. I think that's where I've arrived at. They can't know that it's Ivar Stenberg for the reasons you just brought up. Mm-hmm. But I do think they think
that is quite a leap, Blake. Like 48 hours ago, I don't think you would have said that.
No, it's just triggered in my head that between Karls, Reed, and Stenberg, those three trump Caleb Malhotra.
Okay. The other super chat is from Sam in Campbell River, and it's a really good shout from Sam.
It is.
For picking up something that is coming in with the new CBA. Of course, we're into a new CBA, but some of the rules are backdated to this coming.
Some started last year.
September. That's right.
Yeah.
For example, the 8-year contracts are no longer a thing after this summer. Once we get into September, then the max term is 7 for your own player and 6 for signing free agents.
Salary cap in the playoffs was this year.
All that. Yeah. Sam writes, the new CBA has triggered the cancellation of training camp fitness testing, and it's true. Cynics would say the players sold themselves for no dress code and no fitness testing at training camp.
They wanted
Which
to be
is kind of true.
They wanted to look good.
It was hardly a Bob Goodnow negotiation from the NHLPA.
They wanted to look better, and they didn't want to be embarrassed by their bad view.
Well, no, they want to look better. They wanted to be lazy in their attire. They didn't want to have to get in the suit to, in the case of some buildings, walk across the street from the hotel and enter the building.
Or down the hall in the case of Edmonton.
Like in Nashville, you literally just walk across the street from the hotel. And they're like, we don't want to put suits on to walk across the street in Nashville only to take the suit off. I get it. So Sam continues, what does this mean for EP40 to come into camp ready? Amazing question.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to fitness test him like you have in the past. And, of course, this past year, the veterans all did so poorly that Adam Foote chose not to post the results.
Okay, let me answer this in two different ways. A, bad news is no hard data to know exactly how he's coming into camp with. But B, the flip side, I'll argue against it. You have no preconceived notions now. You don't have the tip-off on day one before they've hit the ice once. You don't have the, oh, shit,
but
he's going to suck.
How could that be helpful?
Because
how would a lack of information inform the process here?
Because you get to lay eyes on him and see if the hockey player is back. I don't think it's just about fitness for this player, Matt. I don't think you could possibly think that it's just about fitness for this player. This is about desire. This is about the willingness to be that player that he was. I don't think he showed the want recently. So needless to say, there's going to be a baseline of fitness required for this player, but that will bear itself out in the play on the ice as well.
Do you remember the draft in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, where Gillis and Gilman were staring down the barrel of the Sedins unrestricted free agency? Was it 08 or 09? I forget. And they made the snap decision, let's just go to Sweden. I believe it was from Montreal. And the next thing you know, they were both on a plane to Sweden. And they were going to show up in Ovik and basically look Hank and Danny in the eye. I hope that Ryan Johnson finds it in his summer, after free agency, to hop on a plane, to go to Stockholm, and look Elias Pettersson in the eye. The other thing I hope that Ryan Johnson does on that visit is say, hey, Elias, let's have a workout tomorrow morning. And Ryan goes into that gym with the hardest workout of his life to see if Elias can keep pace. I think you absolutely, and if you can do that before the draft, that'd be even better. Because I think Ryan Johnson needs to make a value judgment here on whether the kid has enough work ethic to be the player you hope him to be. The Sedins have had some ominous language about Elias Pettersson. I think the fact that they see so many similarities in his journey here in Vancouver and their journey, and yet he hasn't sort of adopted them as mentors, reached out for help, sought their counsel, is a massive red flag. But I think Ryan Johnson needs to go to Sweden and figure some things out himself with Elias.
I just don't think that this needs to be pigeonholed as a fitness issue. It's not.
It's a desire issue.
Yes, that's my point.
Yeah, okay.
That's my point. Like,
so go have the conversation with him eye to eye, showing him, I'm coming over here to Sweden to have this conversation. It means that much to me to look in your eyes, read your body language, and lay all cards on the table.
I think I heard Friedman telling a story yesterday about Brett Hull in fitness testing, unable to do more than 2 pull-ups. And somebody said, that's all you could do? And he said, that's okay. I did this 86 times last year.
Yeah. And if you can shoot the puck like Brett Hull in that era,
and he can,
where you bet
he can. Pettersson can.
Yeah, but in that era, you beat goaltenders from distance. You don't do that very often.
But the point stands.
No.
It is not about fitness for Elias Pettersson. It's not mostly about fitness. Again, there needs to be a baseline.
It's
want.
about investment of time, Blake.
He needs to want to be a pro, and it doesn't look like he wants to be a pro.
Not yet. Okay, on to the Final Four here, which gets going tonight, Colorado and Vegas. Now, look, these are only snapshots because I know every time we bring this up, we have people screaming at us that we don't know hockey. It's heavy hockey that wins in the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. Or when we bring up heavy hockey, we get people screaming at us, no, speed and skill win in the playoffs. You have to have the difference makers with the puck on their stick. The remaining Final Four are hardly the land of giants and behemoths. You have 3 itty-bitty teams in Vegas. Vegas 12th in the league in weight, 1st in height. The rest of them, not very big at all. Carolina, weight, 18th, height, 25th. Thank you, Logan Stankoven. Montreal, weight, 23rd, height, 29th. Thank you, Cole Caulfield and Lane Hudson. Colorado, weight, 28th, height, 27th. Look at where the Avalanche rank, Blake, on height and weight.
I would never have guessed
Never have guessed
that.
that.
Well, Rantanen gone.
Rantanen is gone, but, Nate
there's
himself.
others.
Yeah. Anyways, so thought it was interesting. You have one bigger, heavier team. You've got 3 teams that aren't close to being bigger or heavier.
And Vegas's age, I think, would skew above all of these teams, I would guess. So that sort of brings down.
Well, except that, as we've learned with Corey Perry and the like, sometimes the uber veteran can really bring up the age of a team that's kind of misrepresenting the fact.
I mean,
so I haven't gone through the rosters.
But people think that the Vegas Golden Knights are old and slow. And so while you might look at that and go, oh, Vegas is in a good spot here because they're so big, if they're old and slow, it's not going to help them really.
Now, I imagine Stahl on Carolina at 37 probably brings up their age. Delorier at 35 as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Anderson at 36. The
median age would be a good stat to look at.
This next tidbit on the Final Four is also just a snapshot. Sergei Bobrovsky was making $10 million and won the last 2 cups and played for the last 3. But this does track with things that we talked about long ago, Blake, when we were discussing goaltending with the Vancouver Canucks, an investment in goaltending, which is over what are they paying goaltenders combined next year? $12 million, something like that. So Dobesh is on the rookie deal at $9.65. Freddie Anderson at $2.75 after all his injuries. Carter Hart, $2 million after his travails in a London courtroom and coming back to the NHL. And Scott Wedgwood at $1.5 million. Not exactly superstar goaltender money here left in the Final Four.
No. By the way, 5th oldest team. Vegas Golden Knights are 5th.
Are they?
They're the oldest team in the playoffs
Okay.
and right now, and they're 5th in the NHL.
Let's do the youngest. The Montreal Canadiens, the youngest team to advance to the Final Four in 33 years. And since the 93 Montreal Canadiens. And, of course, the 86 Cup champion Canadiens had all of those rookies, including number 33 in goal, who went on to win some Cups. It seems like when the Habs have won in the post-expansion era, at least the post-WHA, WHL 21 team era, it has been with youth movements. So I don't know if that's foretelling, but an average age of 25.8. And interesting, we wanted to play this because Ryan Johnson was asked about rebuilds around the league yesterday. Montreal and Anaheim were name-checked in the question. Listen to his answer.
Well, it just shows you there is an example, or when you stick to a vision, and you even look at what Anaheim did with the patients with Leo Carlson and some of the monitoring's workloads and all those things. There's lessons to be learned of observing these teams that have gone through it and done it the right way and stayed with it. And you get rewarded at the end, and that's certainly, like we discussed the other day, that's our plan here.
Gone through it and done it the right way. Boy, the more they message that phrase, the more I hope the owner is listening. We'll see. Nation Network, your ultimate playoff headquarters, from expert shows, deep dive articles, live social updates, analytics, fantasy insights, covering every moment, whether it's all those epic goals in the playoffs, the big hits, the game-changing plays. Got you covered. One network every moment. You can tune in to the DFO Rundown or the Sheet with Jeff Merrick daily for your playoff fix. Okay, let's get to our menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to pregame or postgame, your steps from the arena or stadium. Also a great spot if you're hosting a private function. They got the private areas at the back of the bar. You got your own service there. You're surrounded by screens, the arcade with the game for everyone, and the delicious menu of approachable street food. Try the smash burger. It's absolutely delicious. To book your event, for more info, Greta. Go to gretabar.com, Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. Former Vancouver front office and ESPN draft analyst Rachel Kryshak is going to join us, nay Rachel Dory. She's gotten married, changed her name. Terrific conversation with Rachel about this front office, people she worked with, the Sedins, Ryan Johnson, Cami Granato, Aiden Fox, Dax Akmalini, all those names come up. We also talk about the Canucks pick at number 3, Caleb Malhotra, Carson Carrolls, Ivar Stenberg, and others. Frank Corrado going to join us as well. Frank just flat out says, I'm not sure you can do a better presser than what he heard out of the Sedins and Johnson on Thursday. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about fresh slate for Elias Pettersson. Talk about Manny Malhotra and his ascendancy, which seems to be a fait accompli, but who knows. Later in the program, we'll talk some baseball. Embarrassing moment for the Seattle Mariners last night. The whole season has been kind of embarrassing for the Toronto Blue Jays. Big changes come to the world of golf. Do some soccer in there as well. And an absolute banger, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final in the NBA. Holy cow.
Well, the NBA playoff is going as we usually say it does, and that is it gets better as you go along.
As the NHL gets...
Generally speaking, the NHL gets worse. Let's hope there's a bucking in the trend, but the last couple of rounds of the NBA playoffs have been very good.
Put it this way, Blake. I am far more interested in Spurs Thunder tonight than I am Knights Avalanche. Now, if it was deeper in the series, Knights Avalanche, I think that would have the lion's share of my attention. But Game 1 of that series, coming off the absolute classic that San Antonio and Oklahoma City played in Game 1.
I mean, Vegas, I hear you. The basketball game is sublime in terms of the matchup, but this should be a great series.
I hope so.
Vegas
I hope so.
Colorado.
There's a part of me that wonders if Colorado steamrolls, although I love John Tortorella on a bench where you have legitimate external examples of the world being against them. They're getting crucified for the, although Kelly McCrimmon owned it entirely yesterday, for the media lockout after winning the Ducks series. They're getting crucified for the way they're treating Bruce Cassidy. I'm not sure if any of that has any infiltration into the Vegas Golden Knights room. What I do know is John Tortorella loves us versus the world versus everybody, and there are elements to draw on there.
I should have said this to Mike. RotoWire did a most hated NHL team by state. These are the two most hated teams in the National Hockey League.
The Knights and Avs?
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The Avs are that hated.
All of Central North America hates the Avs. All of the Western.
Well, that's because that's their division, right? They play against Minnesota and Chicago.
And all the West hates
Oh, yeah,
Vegas.
ABV.
Yeah.
Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. I was the winner yesterday. Can I go first?
You may go first. Did I win yesterday? I think I might have won yesterday, too. Okay. Yeah. Oh, no, I didn't. I needed that 20 points from Kat.
That's right.
He was 13 and 13.
They kept talking about it in the first half. Where's Kat? How come Kat's not getting more time? I'm going deep today because one of the things that became clear in Game 1 of the NBA's Western Conference Final is that Thunder center Isaiah Hartenstein was rendered unplayable. Here's the problem. He can't shoot from the outside. And when you get to this level in the NBA, all 5 guys need to be able to shoot from the outside. Hartenstein can't, which means Wembanyama he doesn't have to guard him out there. He's free to patrol and block shots and be a help side defender. In fact, Hartenstein played just 12 minutes in Game 1. That's less than half than what he regularly plays. OKC had to go small, play the 4 guards and Chet Holmgren. So you can bet over-under player point totals. An ex-Raptor taught us that. He may go to jail. I'm going under 4.5 points. Under 4.5 points for Isaiah Hartenstein in tonight's Game 2.
Wow. That is a deep
I never
dive.
really go this deep into the menu.
Deep dive.
But I was reading The Athletic on Game 1, and there was a really good story pointing out that Coach of the Thunder had to go against what would be his regular season rotation because Hartenstein just can't shoot from outside, and forget about it. You can't have a guy who they're just not going to guard, who can't space the floor.
I'm going to the hockey game where Pavel Skorofeyev has been prolific of late. And
Pretty good.
the number's big. Like for a guy that's got 9 goals in 12 playoff games, I'm still getting plus 205 on an anytime goal.
What?
Yeah.
And how many get in the regular season?
He had a lot too. He had 37.
30-some?
37.
37.
Plus 9 in the playoffs.
Oh, wow.
He's got a Cy Young going in the playoffs. 9-2. Plus 205 again. Pavel Skorofeyev.
Every sports fan will tell you that not all games are created equal. Sometimes the excitement just isn't there. Sometimes you get a dud. It happens. But at Bet365, boring games, a thing of the past. Now, there's always reason to tune in, even if the score isn't one of them. And while they can't make every game exciting, they can help fans get excited about every game. Bet365. Download the app today. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Rachel Kryshak is next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. We welcome in Rachel Kryshak, nay Dory, former Vancouver Canucks front office and ESPN draft analyst. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. I'm doing well. It's a long time since I've done anything Vancouver related.
You're welcome back.
Yeah, well, we wanted to have you back as we saw your draft rankings, and needless to say, we saw you tweeting about all the activity here with the Vancouver Canucks front office. So let's start there. I don't know how well you got to know Ryan Johnson and the Sedin twins, but they have moved on up and into the decision-making chairs for Canucks Sports and Entertainment. What's your take?
I think it's a real positive for the organization. I completely and was on the side of getting a fresh perspective because I think it's pretty hard to run back 95% of the front office that landed you where you are today. But if there are three people in that organization that are going to turn it around, it's those three. There's nobody that cares more about the Canucks than the Sedins. And I don't think that that's necessarily even a hot take. But those are also two guys that touched so many different parts of the organization. Even when I was there, they went from advisors to player development. They were within scouting meetings. They were doing player development camp. They were at training camp. Like, there wasn't an area of the organization that they were not physically touching, aware of, and working with. So I think that that's kind of the ideal apprenticeship, if you will, to become the president, because you familiarize yourself with everybody. And they're also really good at taking ideas, and they're not afraid to say what needs to be said. If they don't believe that someone belongs wearing a Vancouver Canuck uniform, they don't have any qualms saying that. And I think Ryan Johnson also fits that. He's proven that he can build something in Abbotsford. And I really liked his ability in meetings. Like, I noticed the guy just shut up and listened to everybody talk, took in ideas, took in every single person's opinion. If he heard something interesting you say, he would pull you over at the break and say, tell me a little bit more about that. What's your thought process there? He actually made an effort to make sure that everybody else felt heard. And I think generally the ideas he brought to the table after that were really good ones because he had gone away and really thought about it. I think that's going to serve all three of them really well in their kind of journey to bring the Canucks back to playoff and Stanley Cup contention. So I really do think the Canucks are in good hands here.
Listening is a high-end skill that is lacking in society, yeah. So that's great to hear. The Twins said they would not have taken this gig if they did not get the vote of confidence from the owner that this is a rebuild. We are doing this properly. We are doing a rebuild. If anybody else says that, if it's a slick, 20-year GM in the National Hockey League, I don't know that I believe it the same way that I believe it from the Sedins. I believe that they believe those words. The question is, do you believe that they will get all the autonomy that they think that they have right now?
That's a little bit more difficult. I totally agree with you in that there's no way they would have taken that job if Francesco Aquilini said that they weren't allowed to actually rebuild. I also think they know that the public knows if all of a sudden they start steering away from it, it isn't because the Sedins want to steer away from it, and the arrows are probably not going to get pointed at them. What I will say is this. When I was there, Dax Aquilini had started to really be a little bit more present. He is a lawyer. He's a member of the bar. So, I mean, I have some concerns about the contract situation there, but that is somebody with some experience. And I do think over the last 5 or so years, he's somebody that Francesco has really started to listen to, and he's been a little bit more entrenched. I kind of feel like he's the heir apparent. That I always have felt that way. And I think his involvement now has really started to shape the way Francesco Aquilini is willing to listen, is willing to sort of work with hockey operations. And so you kind of have the buffer as the Sedins, but you also have the buffer in the form of somebody with his own last name. And I think that gives them a better chance at being successful with this. And I mean, it's notable that this is really the first time that another member of the Aquilini family has been this entrenched in a positive way. And I think it can only really be a positive thing. Like, having dealt personally with Dax, he is a stand-up individual, and he's not afraid to tell you to kick rocks if he disagrees with you. And so I think he's going to be vitally important to this entire process.
I have heard nothing but great things about Dax Aquilini over the years. A lot of things you said about RJ. Great listener, asks good questions in meetings, doesn't have the air of a kid who grew up with extreme wealth, is willing to work, smart, intuitive, like all of those things have been mentioned to me about Dax Aquilini in the past. So terrific to hear you say that, because yeah, I mean, obviously Canucks fans are hoping for the dawn of a new era. Let me ask this. You mentioned that the Sedin twins aren't afraid to identify a player who they don't think belongs. Blake and I have had that experience with them. That is their area of expertise. They have firm opinions on players. They don't always share them, certainly not to the greater public, but I think that's clear. What we're a little more wondering about is, do the three of them as a collective, because they are such good people and nice people, do they have the ruthlessness? Do they have the mettle to move on people in the front office who don't belong, much like that hockey player that stands out, Rachel?
Listen, it's not a secret what happened in Vancouver with me. So I will reserve comment on a specific individual, but I will say this. I think Cami Granado's getting a lot of undue flack here. I really think she's one of the best leaders in that organization. And if you are trying to reshape a culture, you need a good leader. And maybe she's wearing too many hats. I'm not even sure how many hats she's wearing at this point. But I really think she is a valuable member of that front office. And if you maybe make it so that she doesn't have to wear 3 or 4 hats, that might make her job easier. But I don't know kind of what's changed here, but I really do think Cami can be a really important part of rebuilding the culture because number one, we're talking about a Hall of Fame hockey player. She knows what she's looking for in terms of human beings, but I don't think that she should lose her job. But as it pertains to being ruthless within the front office, I have some questions about that too. I mean, RJ is very kind, and so are the Sedins. The Sedins are interesting, though, because I have heard one of them, I'm not going to say which one, physically say that guy doesn't deserve to wear the crest. Like, that cold-hearted about it and that honest. And that kind of
we've heard similar. We've heard similar. Yeah.
So I don't know about the front office, though, because they work so closely with these individuals. And I don't think it should be controversial to say that front office, there are some significant weaknesses there. And the person that you bring in, because you need to bring in at least one person in an AGM role to run Abbotsford, like, you might need some fresh perspectives here. You might need somebody that has some significant experience here. And I mean, you're going to be navigating some pretty interesting waters as it pertains to various parts of the organization. It might help you to have somebody who's been in the league for longer than 5 years.
Yeah, a couple of things I just want to get back to. First of all, when you talk about Cami wearing too many hats, RJ is on record on that just yesterday, not on Cami, but about he wants people singularly focused. He doesn't want broad portfolios where people are responsible for a number of things. He talked about doing one thing and doing it well. On the analytics side, Rachel, and of course you've got an analytics background. We all know Aiden Fox. We all know Ryan Beach. They're good people. I think they're good professionals as well, though I do not have the math background to critique their work. I think the question in the past has been, how much influence do they have in that organization? And it sounds very much like Evan Gold, the runner-up for this job, who was supposed to bring his own director of analytics, really wanted to expand that department and give it more influence.
Well, influence and resources. Are they given the resources to excel versus other teams?
Okay, so this is what I'm going to say, and this is probably going to surprise some people. I agree with Ryan Johnson's assessment of Aiden Fox. I think Aiden Fox is fantastic. I think Aiden Fox deserves to lead that analytics department, and he is somebody who is particularly good at mentoring the people underneath him to learn and grow and develop in their roles. So he is somebody I would absolutely keep, and probably he had a pretty big voice even when I was there, and I can't imagine it got smaller in the last 4 years. I would continue to sort of build that out. He was somebody that management really trusted, was in all the important stuff. Ryan is less an analytics guy, like a math guy, and more of like a video scouting, working with the scouting staff guy. I think the key guy here is Miles Hogan. He is the developer. And if you are going to build out a robust analytics department, and I mean, I've been in a couple analytics departments. I also have a lot of friends in them. I know what other teams look like and what they have. You need internal databases. You need internal reporting. You need software engineers, development engineers, like data scientists. They don't have those to the degree that other teams do. And that's how you improve your efficiency as an organization. So I think if Ryan Johnson wants to really dump some money in, I mean, those people don't come cheap. Like, no engineer is going to be less than $100,000 and $150,000 kind of situation. But I do think that those guys deserve some help. I think Ryan's strength in the scouting is probably where, and Ryan Johnson talked about having people work with their strengths. I think that suits Beach well. I think Aiden is really well suited as a leader. And I think Miles, from a development standpoint, they need to give him some help if they haven't already, and they will be going in a much better direction.
And this circles back to Dax Aquilini, I think, a little bit, because I don't know that Francesco is going to say, I understand the value of spending money there, even though they're going to be probably saving money on the roster, I would say, in the next couple of years. Like, they don't need to spend like they have recently, unless they're taking on a bad contract for assets, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But, somebody's going to have to let the guys on the top know that this is money well spent, and this is how we're going to spend money, as opposed to signing a $12 million a year superstar UFA, right?
If it comes back to what Michael Blake McCurdy said years ago, you could pay me $150,000 to save you $8 million a year. That feels like a pretty good ROI. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, without getting into too much detail, that if they would have listened to some of the people, including Aiden Fox in their department, that organization probably would be saving more than a few $1 million right now. So I think it's not only just building them out and giving them the resources to build internal databases so that you're not relying on external things, but it's also give them a heavier voice in the room. Don't put people that are small on do not draft lists just because they're small, and then they end up in the Norris Trophy conversation. And don't sign contracts when they tell you that your age curve is going to make it so that they're unplayable, or there might be other concerns about them. So I think it's resources and putting weight behind their opinions. I do believe that the Sedins and RJ will do that.
Can we move on to the draft?
We may.
Okay. Honestly, I could go all day on the front office, Rachel. We'll have to have you back, but let's get on to the draft here. Do you perceive a problem of hiring Manny Malhotra as head coach and drafting Caleb Malhotra 3rd overall?
I wouldn't do it. There have been enough nukes in that locker room for an entire franchise history. I lived through a couple of them, not a lot of fun. I don't think for a second that either one of them would be bad in the dressing room. In fact, I think both are going to be fantastic in the dressing rooms they end up in. I'm more speaking to, will you want to complain about your coach? And being in the coach's office, like, guys go to the assistant coaches to complain about the head guy all the time, because head guy is bad cop, unless your name is Bruce Boudreau, in which case everybody loves you. Yeah. But then you look at it, you don't want to put a young kid who you potentially view as your franchise center, and we can get to that evaluation later. You don't want to put him in a spot where his teammates aren't comfortable around him because his father is the head coach. That's not putting your head coach in a position to succeed, and that's not putting your young 18-year-old 3rd overall pick in a position to succeed, and that is not a pick you can afford to mess up. So I think you do have to make a choice here. And I think, generally speaking, given where the Canucks are selecting this year, there's actually a pretty good chance they could get a good center with the 24th overall pick. I would hire Manny. I think the world of Manny Malhotra, and I would step up and take one of the excellent defensemen, or heaven forbid, Ivar Stenberg gets to you at 3. Like, I'm sprinting to the stage at that point going, yep, that's my guy, and we're leaving after that. I would just eliminate that problem altogether.
Well, so that's the follow-up question, and you've half answered it there. Like, will it even be a conundrum? Should it be a conundrum for them? If it goes according to Hoyle, San Jose does not trade away their pick. Are you betting that they need to look Caleb Malhotra in the eyes, or are you betting that there are Chase Reeds and Ivar Stenberg's available to them as alternatives?
So here's what I would say. You just traded away Quinn Hughes. That's no secret. A couple of years ago, they drafted Tom Verlander because they thought they needed a defenseman, and they passed on Zach Benson. I don't think anyone's going to argue and say that Zach Benson is not a better hockey player and probably would have been a fantastic center for the Vancouver Canucks. I think drafting for position when you are this talent poor as an organization, you need help everywhere. And how many times have we seen a team without a number one defenseman win a Stanley Cup? It almost never happens. You have the opportunity here to get somebody like a Chase Reed or my personal favorite, Carson Karls. My model's closest comp for him is Zach Werenski. That's a guy that you can really do some damage with. And if Ivar Stenberg gets to you at 3, we're talking about a guy who is a high-end winger. He's essentially William Nylander from an offensive ceiling standpoint, but he's an excellent two-way player. That's a guy that already has built-in professional habits that can help you win immediately. So I don't think you should be, if you're selecting in the top 3, and in the Canucks case, you were last by a mile, I don't think you should be saying we need to draft for position. You need to just step up and take the best player available. I don't think Gavin McKenna is going to be available. I think Toronto's going to take him. But if he is available, you can bet that that's who they should be taking.
Blake and I are neither math nor science people. Our last models were with Lego sets as children. What is it about your model that draws a Carson Karls, Zach Werenski comp, Rachel?
So in my model, I compare your draft year production compared to that player's draftation. So I'm not saying he's going to be Zach Werenski in the NHL. I'm saying how Zach Werenski performed in his draft year is comparable to how Carson Karls is performing in his draft year. Then I look at his impact on the play, his size, the amount of time on ice he has, his scoring profile, both in his current draft year and in his D-1 draft year, and the strength of league that he's playing in. The WHL, relatively speaking, is a pretty strong league, even though guys have left for the NCAA this year. That's a little more difficult to account for. And then I look at how Carson Karls, and this is less model and more I have to choose based on eyes, because I give the model gives me 10 comps. And I have to choose. And Zach Werenski is a guy who controls all facets of the game. He controls it offensively. He controls it defensively. The guy is going to win the Norris this year. When I watch Carson Karls play, he controls the play when he is on the ice. If he is on the ice, he decides what pace the game is being played at, where the game is being played, when goals are or are not being scored, when time needs to be killed, when various things. And that's exactly what Zach Werenski does in Columbus. So I think I really thought that was a solid comp.
Yeah. And he's he shows as a 80% NHL probability on your evaluation. Hey, can we ask about Caleb? You got him at number 9. NHL ceiling top line, NHL floor third line, NHL probability 74%, most likely tier second line, and a statistical comparable here, Matty Beniers. Give me your breakdown on Caleb. Things you like, things you're a little worried about.
Yeah, so just strict model speaking, and I'm going to have rankings that are more weighted to the eye test. I'm also going to the combine to get some results there. My concern about Caleb is outside of the back half of this season, he has not produced very well. And so his D-1 production was not fantastic also in the BCHL. And then at the beginning of the OHL year, it also wasn't very good. Now, the back half of the season, I actually had to skew the model a little bit for Caleb because he was even lower. And that was because it was taking his full year production. And I had to weight his back half because he was kind of a different hockey player in his draft year. Caleb also got a boost because he's a younger, he's a July birthday, I believe. So he got a boost for his production. I do think that there's a chance that he pops off more than almost any other player in the first round in terms of growth in his draft plus 1 year next season. But for me, it's more production related. He showed he could do it in the playoffs. That was really important for me. But when I look at what a top line center is in the National Hockey League, and particularly an elite foundational center, he does not have the same dynamicism that somebody like a Jack Eichel or a Connor McDavid did in their draft year. And I'm not saying that there aren't other top line centers, but to me, I think that there's a better chance he profiles more as a Dylan Strome scoring profile with a much better two-way game than he does as a guy who's playing on a top line on a Stanley Cup team. I think he's in the tier sort of below that.
All of this is contingent on what San Jose does, though, in terms of what the Canucks do. You talked about the Canucks just needing to plug so many holes. It's best player available, and that makes a lot of sense. San Jose is at a different stage of their rebuild. They're on the cusp here. Their holes are starting to be plugged up. Do they draft a defenseman there because that is their biggest need by a country mile? You can see them trading that away to get an NHL defenseman. What is San Jose going to do at number 2, which so impacts what the Canucks do at 3?
Yeah, so I think this is a very rare scenario where you can afford to do it, and that's for 2 reasons. Number 1, you're pretty much almost there. But number 2, Carson Karls and Ivar Stenberg are this close in my model. Like, I could have flip-flopped them, and there's a non-zero chance that I personally flip-flop them as it pertains to my final rankings. I think Karls is that good, and I think that if you're in San Jose shoes and you look and you also believe that, you need that type of player. You have franchise forwards. Now, at the same time, you could just step up and take Ivar Stenberg, you reset the clock, and maybe you're trading a guy like William Eklund or Michael Misa or Will Smith for a defenseman, because you can't tell me that those young players aren't going to bring you an NHL-proven defenseman almost immediately. Like, I'm sure that if they called the Vancouver Canucks and offered a combination of William Eklund and something for Filip Hronek, the Canucks are probably going to think long and hard about that. And they should, for a number of reasons. But they have so much talent in their pool that they can afford to take a defenseman that is kind of on par with Ivar Stenberg, in my eyes at least.
Just quickly, Rachel, you said you think the Canucks are getting a good player, maybe even a center with the 24th overall selection, the Minnesota Wild pick. What do you think? Chance they could walk away with both Ruck twins here for Medicine Hat with 24 and 33?
I do think there's a chance. I really do. I will say this. If Nikita Klepov is there at 24, I think
he seems to have a lot of helium, Rachel. I see him. You've got him 6. I see him top 10, top 15 everywhere now. Boy, he seems to have a ton of helium right now as scouting staffs dig in on his work.
It's one of those things where the guy's like OHL scoring leader. My comps for him are Kyle Connor and Jake Gensel. That feels like it should be a lot higher than 24, but I know teams have some concerns. I haven't gotten to the bottom of why that is, because I watch him play hockey and I'm like, hey, I like Jake Gensel. I think he's really good at hockey. I think Kyle Connor is also really good at hockey. But there's also a couple centers, right? You've got Ilya Morozov. You do have the Ruck brother opportunity there. I'm higher on Ryan Rubrek than a lot of other people are. I really think in the right development environment, this guy has the chance to be a high-end second-line center. Brooks Rogowski is another one that I think they could look at, either 24 or 33. I would not be necessarily focused on acquiring, put it this way, if you take a forward at 3, I think you're going to have an opportunity to take a defenseman like a Tommy Blyle at 24. I think you have a lot of options there. Do I think it's plausible that they get both Ruck brothers? Yes, I absolutely do. But if you have better guys ahead on your board, I don't think you can do that. I think you just have to take both. You have to take the best player available.
You are in talent accumulation, asset harvesting mode if you're the Vancouver Canucks, and you work out positions later. See, I do learn a thing or two from all the analytics and smart math people. Great catching up. Fantastic conversation. Thanks for the time, Rachel. Hope you're well. Look forward to having you back on the show.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the World Cup. We know you'll be watching that as well.
Oh, you bet.
Sigarson Price from the Historic Wall Center. We are joined by former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Francesco Antonio Corrado. How are you?
I'm good. I am eagerly awaiting arrival to Kelowna. Get back out to BC, call the Memorial Cup, enjoy the weather, and play some golf.
Can I lean on you for Italian names at the Worlds? So my first game is Sweden at Italy, and
when do you leave?
Today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I may ping you. Yes.
Yeah, you let me know.
Give
buddy.
me your best Italian.
I got you.
So there's been some news here. I don't know if you've been keeping track, but the Canucks are changing everything. Well, actually, we'll get to that. They're not changing everything. They're changing a lot of things. First of all, let's start with last week and the unveiling of the twins and Ryan Johnson. That press conference, most people don't think they put too much wrong. What did you think?
Listen, I think as far as press conferences go, I don't know how much better you can do than that. Like, they kind of spoke to the market and the fan base in a way that would have resonated. And they do it from obviously a very credible background. And I just love the fact that they reiterated multiple times, and this was especially the Twins, that, you know, if they really had to sell someone on something or fight to do something a certain way, it just wasn't going to be for them. And it seems very obvious that, like, there's really one direction and one path for this organization to go. And those guys are so heavily invested in the city and the team and bringing the team back to where it should be that, like, I can't think of two better people to be that high up in the organization and be calling the shots. And so, you know, I thought all the questions that were asked were fair. And as far as the answers they gave, I can't think of one question and one answer that they didn't give, you know, at least a 9 out of 10 response that you would have looked at it and said, it's exactly what I wanted to hear from those guys.
They weren't effusive on the autonomy question, but the early signs are very good here. They have been able to execute a coaching change when some thought the owner wanted to keep the head coach, or at least not pay the head coach not to coach. What do you make of their first big move of blowing out Adam Foote and his staff?
Well, I think first of all, it's worth noting that it was not an easy situation for Adam Foote to be a head coach in the NHL. With everything going on around this team, so many things went wrong. The drama continued. Their best player didn't play like, you know, their best player. You had a ton of injuries. The goaltending position was in flux constantly. Like, it's hard for Adam Foote to walk away from that season looking good and feeling good about the product that was on the ice. It wasn't a great situation. So that's first and foremost. But, you know, secondly, now making the decision to move on, I think what you're seeing here is, like, it's a fresh slate. And they even talked about it with Elias Pettersson, right? Like, let's remove all the preconceived notions and narratives, and let's just kind of come in here and start and work and build this thing up. And it's going to take time. So they're going to bring in a voice. I can't imagine it's anyone other than Manny Malhotra, but that's someone that's patient and who's aligned with them, and is going to do things the right way over time that will eventually, hopefully, lead to good results. But it was an unfortunate year for Adam Foote to have to step in and be a head coach. Really, there was a lot working against him.
Can I ask the rebuttal question that I'm seeing a lot from Vancouver Canucks fans these days, and that is, does Elias Pettersson deserve a clean slate? Like, how many years do you have to go through practice habits, summer preparation? It's on him before you just go, okay, I'm not sure that is worthy of a fresh slate.
Well, you think you do it one more time because these are the guys in charge now and they weren't in charge before. So you do it one more time and you say, we're going to forget about everything and we're going to start fresh right now. What can you bring to the table, and can you prepare for this season to the best of your ability? Because they even talked about it in the press conference. They had years, like Daniel and Henrik said, they had years where they didn't feel like they were at their best. and they could go back to the summer and say we weren't as prepared as we wanted to be or needed to be. Well, Elias Pettersson can at least try and do that one more time. New coach, new management, new way of doing things. And I think you have to do that first before you just say we're gonna move on, because it's the more prudent way of doing things. Like if you don't have to create a mess, don't create a mess. And see if it can work before you start thinking about taking back money and how you're going to move him on. So I think this really is like it's last call you, like that Netflix show for Pettersson in Vancouver.
Yeah, do something different. Don't just do what you were doing more intensely. Do something different, because it hasn't been working up until this point. You say it's most likely Manny. I think most people are walking down that boulevard with you. But there's two ways to look at this. The diligent thing is to, cast a wide net, see everybody that's available, do all that sort of thing. But is that just a waste of time when you know in your heart of hearts you really just want Manny? Which is the more prudent thing to do for the Vancouver Canucks right now? Cast the wide net, look at everybody, or just save everybody's time and hire the guy that you very clearly want?
If you want to cast the wide net and interview a bunch of people, the worst thing that's going to happen is you might learn a thing or two about your team, about the process, and going through it. And at the end of the day, if Manny's your guy, Manny's your guy. You just, it has an optics thing, I think, as well, where
Yep.
if you go to, you're obviously very front facing now, and you say Manny was our top internal candidate, but we wanted to check in with everyone and we wanted to see what was out there. And we were going to leave no stone unturned. Like, I feel like that's a very popular phrase nowadays with all of these searches, whether it's Vancouver or Toronto or Edmonton, wherever. So I think there's an optics factor with doing that. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you might pick up something, a tidbit or two along the way, and Manny could just be your guy the whole time anyways.
The only retort I have for you on that is all of that would be totally fine if it's April 20th, not May 20th. And this has been an extended process to this point. And Ryan Johnson was talking about the fact they need to re-up some scouts. They need to re-up some medical officer. Like there's a lot of stuff on the to-do list before the draft. And this is a big lead up to a big draft. As long as they think they've got the time for that, Frank, by all means. But I'm looking at the calendar right now, and I'm a little bit worried on their behalf that they've got the time to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, like you don't have to interview 12 coaching candidates. Like, you don't honestly believe that you have that many guys that could take this position. So you could go straight to your short list and full well know that, Manny's the top guy if that's the case. I can't envision a world where, like, there's been interest in him from other teams and they've wanted to keep him in the organization, and now they're going to talk to someone who's an assistant on another team or someone who's an AHL coach on another team. Like, don't look too far. I think and those guys would obviously have worked very, very closely. For me, there's 0% chance it's a different coach. It just can't be. And I remember when Toronto fired Babcock and they brought in Sheldon Keefe, I'm pretty sure Kyle Dubas said there was no other anything. It was Sheldon's the coach. Like, this is the closest to that I can think of with this head coaching vacancy.
We're all putting him behind the bench, as you just did, Frank. Let's put ourselves in Manny Malhotra's shoes. Okay, there's only 32 of these jobs in the National Hockey League. I aspire to one. I would be working for people I'm very comfortable with, and Ryan Johnson, who I've worked hand in hand with, Ann Henrik, and Daniel Sedin. I am also going to lose a hell of a lot of hockey games over the next few years and probably not be there to see the other side of the rebuild rainbow. How desirable is this job?
As opposed to coaching a Hall of Famer in Toronto, maybe a couple of them.
Well,
I think the Vancouver job is more desirable than the Toronto job because of the expectations and the pressure. The expectation in Vancouver is you need to build something that is going to be sustainable. So that means you have to coach and connect with individuals who are young and are going to be skilled, and the roster is going to turn over quite a bit over time. But at some point, the relationships that you cultivate early on are going to bear fruit, hopefully, in a few years. And as far as longevity goes, you're looking at a situation where, as long as it doesn't look like a complete and utter disaster and circus, like guys are trying, guys are bought in, guys want to go to the rink every day, then you're in a good spot. You just have to get a little bit better every single year. Whereas, if you're taking that job in Toronto, where it's May 20th, in 6 weeks, you have no idea what your roster looks like. Is the Hall of Fame guy that you're talking about, is he there? Yeah. Is William Nylander there? Like, that's and what's the after effect of those decisions either happening or not happening? Is it win right now? Are you gone in 2 years? Like, I think this is a job where, similar to when Marty St. Louis took over in Montreal, focus on one thing at a time. And the first thing he had to focus on was Caulfield. So focus on one thing at a time and build this, and you will be, you could be there for a long time.
Fair enough. Getting back narrowly to the Canucks job. His other option is to coach out one more season in Abbotsford and be a total free agent. But Abbotsford did some losing this year, and Abbotsford could do some losing next year as well. And so you would be a little susceptible to the bloom coming off the rose of a Calder Cup champion, up-and-coming young head coach. But you tell me, would you be surprised? Would you blame Manny if he looks around and goes, no, I'm going to bet on myself? This Vancouver job has a ton of losing in the early going. They may even draft my kid, which could be a little weird. The Toronto job could be where I'm the guy starting the rebuild, not necessarily getting in on the upswing. I'm going to stick it out one more year and then see what else is open next summer.
Well, the thing is, you'd be the logistics of that, I think, are really difficult, because you're in the organization, in theory, that you'd be saying no to their NHL job. So then why would they want you to be their AHL coach if you have no thought of ever being their NHL coach? Like Travis Green was the AHL coach, and then he gets the NHL job. And it made sense that was the case, because he was going to get hired by someone else. So why not stay within the organization? You would think you're aligned with these guys. And it's not like, with who's taken over now in Vancouver, who do you think Manny Malhotra would trust more? The guys that he played with and knows, on such a personal level, or other guys that are kind of starting out same way, but you don't really have that much prior experience with them? I don't know. I feel like that would be a different or a really difficult way to thread the needle for Manny to say, I'll stay in your organization, but over here, and then I'll bolt.
It's a narrow path.
For sure.
Let that happen.
For sure. Well, maybe if they cut him free, that's exactly what he wants. Have we had the Caleb discussion with you about what it would be like to have a father coaching his son in the NHL?
I mean, it feels like such a minor hockey kind of thing to talk about, but listen, it's not the first time. If it were to happen, it wouldn't have been the first time that there's a coach-son combination. I mean, it's happened a long time, in the past, long time ago.
Well, Lowry not too long ago, that was fairly arm's length
for a handful of games. Skylar with Rod Brindamore the last couple.
Yeah,
of years.
that's that's a short burst. We've seen assistants, right? Like the McLeans on Long Island. So yeah, there's it has happened, but ultimately it's out of your control to a certain degree. We don't know what the timelines are going to be. We don't know who's going to be available, and what the decision is when they make that selection. But I think people will operate with integrity, in the sense that no one wants to do wrong by anyone. The coach doesn't want to do wrong by his son. The son wants to carve out his own legacy. And kind of going back to that press conference with the Twins and Ryan Johnson, one of the words that was used a lot was support, right? I feel like that would be it wouldn't be a thing that's villainized. I think it's something that they would add a lot of support around it to make sure that the coach is getting the most out of the group and the young player is getting to where he needs to go, and there's no real distractions about it.
It's complicated if the Canucks pick at 3 and he's third on their board and it all goes according to Hoyle. And then they really are faced with that conundrum of, do we have 2 Malhotras on the team? The other option is they can sort of wiggle free and know that they're out of that if they trade up. If they pick number 2 and they're going to go get Ivar Stenberg, or, should the Canucks be aggressive at the draft and go and get the guy that they want to go and get?
The crazy thing right now is, like, I'm sure there's all these amateur meetings happening and everyone's talking about who's going 1, 2, and 3. I bet, like, if you had 10 scouts sitting at a table, there would have been years where 8 or 9 out of 10 would be able to say unanimously, this is what it's going to go. If I think back to my year, right, it's going to go Nugent Hopkins, Landeskog, Huberdeau. I don't know. Like, you pick the year, right? I feel like this year you'd probably be sitting around that table and it could be like 5 or 6 scouts say this is the way it's going to go. And then 2 or 3 say, actually, I think it's going to go that way. And that would be common for all these teams having these conversations. So, you could talk about trading up to 2, but what if the player that you really want is going to be available at 3? And we just don't know. We don't know yet until teams get really deep into these, interviews and combine and all the stuff that still needs to shake out before we get clarity on it. And we might not get clarity on it until the first night of the draft. Who knows?
Feels like a blender. It really does in the top
10.
Yeah.
I got to say I'm a little disappointed for the Memorial Cup from the standpoint of I was rooting for Moncton because I wanted to see that right shot draft eligible defenseman. I was rooting for Prince Albert because I wanted to see more of Coots, but I also wanted to see more of Daxon Rudolph. Not exactly a huge contingent of highly ranked draft eligibles at the Mem Cup, but we do want you to keep your eyes on Gabe Sherratt of Kitchener and Parker Alcos of Kelowna for us, the 2 Vancouver Canucks prospects.
And the Canucks draft pick for next year, Landon Dupont. Also keep an eye on him.
That kid's too, right?
That kid can play, by the way. Like, he's a pretty good player. He's pretty remarkable for a guy that's just going to be turning 17 when the tournament starts, what he's been doing. But, the 2 guys you talk about, like, from what I've been told and kind of watched, like, Parker Alcos has been a really stable presence for Kelowna. Like, he brought a lot of stability to that blue line, and that's something that they very much value. And Gabe Sherratt, like, maybe lacks a little bit in the points department, but big penalty kill minutes, prides himself on being a shutdown forward, which is, quite uncommon at the junior level nowadays, where agents and parents are just telling you need to have 100 points. He's a little bit of a different kind of player and can be a difference maker that way. And I know the Rangers feel very highly of him. So it'll be interesting for sure.
Yep. Looking forward to the tournament. Looking forward to Frank Corrado and Jeff O'Neill and the social media content from the golf courses of the Okanagan.
Yeah. I hope you're going to have the cameras rolling.
Come on. You're playing golf with O'Neill 9 straight days. Surely there's some hilarity. Surely there's some social media content gold.
Put a GoPro on the cart.
Exactly.
Come on.
I will do. You won't even know we were out there, buddy. We'll be back at the hotel before people are getting up for breakfast.
It's probably true.
Okay, and thanks for the invite. Appreciate that, Frank. Enjoy British Columbia and the Mem Cup. We'll catch up next week.
See you, Frank.
All right. See you, boys. Bye.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center in the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee. Game night turns into game weekend. Here at the Wall Center, from puck drop to last call, everything you need right outside your door. Stay where the fans stay. wallcenter.com. Well, a tough loss for the Seattle Mariners, but a tougher moment for skipper Dan Wilson. Oh, boy. The so-called piggyback experiment of Bryce Miller and Luis Castillo pitching in the same game worked nearly to perfection. Castillo comes in to relieve Miller, first relief appearance of his terrific Major League Baseball career. He gets to the 9th inning, sitting on a 1-run lead. He's visited by the Mariners pitching coach to buy time for closer Andres Munoz to get ready. And, well, Dan Wilson then goes and tries to remove him from the game. Only problem, can't do that. He's got to throw a pitch after a mound visit. Wilson, postgame, quote, "You're not allowed to go back out, and that's on me. I thought we could still go out and make the change." He didn't know the rule.
It's not a new rule either.
I didn't
For 10
perceive it
years
as
old?
a
It's
rule,
about 10
new
years
rule
old?
either. Yes.
I remember when they went in. It was
Yeah.
a number of years ago.
Yeah. Oh, tough. Castillo gets the next hitter, but Munoz can't nail down the save. White Sox win 2-1.
Yeah, I was following along on social, and everybody was going crazy about how well the pitching was going.
Mariners fans were none too pleased with their skipper not knowing the rule. And a rule, again, that sort of stands to reason. Anyways.
It was done to avoid time wasting.
Well, that's it. There have been a series of rules that have come in here to avoid time wasting for the commercial audience. Jays also lose. They blow a 3-0 lead at the stadium in the Bronx. They strand the go-ahead run in
just
the
when you
ninth.
think they've got traction, they just throw it all away.
They are 11.5 games back of the Yankees for first place in the AL East. That's the really terrible news. The good news?
The rest of the league is terrible.
They are 2 games back of a wild card.
Yeah.
How bad is the American League top to bottom? The Texas Rangers sit on the final playoff spot with a record of 23-25. Blake, 2 games under 500 gets you into the AL playoffs right now.
Yeah. Yeah, the very good are very good, but everybody else is terrible. And it's the saving grace here for the Jays, who I honestly do believe, Matt, are better than what they have shown.
Yeah, oh, no doubt.
But
every single player in the lineup is making less contact than what they made last year.
Yeah. And the injuries to the starting rotation, like there is ample reasons / excuses as to where they are. But they can't expect the rest of the league to wait for them for much longer.
Now, look, I think the Yankees are far and gone. I think that's too good a team. Yeah. Now, the Rays have done this in the past where they get off to a terrific start and they fade in the back half. They don't have the ammunition there in Tampa often to be able to backfill when injuries strike. They're not out there making huge trades, at the deadline for veteran expensive bats or arms. We'll see where this goes. Vancouver Canadians lose in Spokane, but another dazzling performance from lefty Johnny King. An 8th straight start with 1 run or fewer to open his 2026 campaign. Remember, this is the youngest player in the Northwest League at 19 years old. He's the number 4 Toronto Blue Jays prospect, although I imagine when MLB Pipeline updates its rankings, he will increase. His ERA is 0.99. Batters are hitting 147 against him.
He's 6'3". He's over 200 pounds.
Yeah. There's really nothing lacking here.
No, he's made in the lab.
And Blake, I'm now seeing Blue Jays fans talk about what you made, the comment you made last week, and that is, okay, I get we care about his arm and he's 19 and all, but at some point I think you have to let him be challenged by AA hitters because clearly single A or high A hitters are not of his caliber.
Make him the 5th or 5.5 pitcher in a AA rotation. Maybe you don't trot him out every single time through the rotation.
Well,
or something.
There will come a point where they put the brakes on or slow down his pitch counts. But
there's reason to be excited about this guy.
Oh, no question. Bullpen blew it for the C's. Nolan Perry starts tonight. C's back home Tuesday for 75-cent hot dogs and a Mounties pennant giveaway. Huge week of promotions and giveaways next week at the Nat. We'll get into it as the week goes on and as the games get nearer. But mention that Sunday sellout. Look, if the weather is nice next weekend, it is going to be a very tough ticket for the Vancouver Canadians at Nat Bailey Stadium. We got our first May sellout ever. We know that Vancouver loves to congregate at the Nat when the weather is nice. Get on this. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com.
And we'll do our best to earmark Johnny King starts, I think, going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And tell you about them ahead of time because you want to catch a glimpse. This is Trey Savage kind of territory, right?
You're starting to get there. Yeah. Now, sadly, if they stick with the current rotation, he will start again in Spokane, which means he's not going to start till later next week at the Nat. And really, if he puts up another gem, you're almost waiting for the...
Yeah, really, the next one at the Nat, go see it.
Right.
It may be the last one.
Major League Soccer has fined Whitecaps keeper Yohei Takaoka for failing to leave the field in a timely manner in the 64th minute on Saturday versus Houston after his red card. Keepers don't get red cards very often.
I don't think he believed it. He really just was like, what have I done? I just, maybe if I just don't leave, they won't notice. They noticed.
And early, we mentioned 3 Caps keepers in history have been red carded. David Osted the last 9 years ago. Joe Cannon, remember Joe?
Yes.
Friendly Joe. He also was sent off with a red card.
Maybe
but it hasn't happened.
The 3 nicest keepers you could find.
That's right.
Honestly, David Osted is a gem as well.
David Osted was fiery on the pitch, though. Absolute nicest of nice guys off the pitch. Has made his home here in Vancouver. But, boy, he was a boss at the back.
No, that's true. He was a screamer. Yeah.
Well, I can remember interviewing him and talking to him about the guy he turns into back
Bruce
there.
Banner and the Incredible Hulk.
Screaming at everybody. But we talked about how rare this is in global soccer and in MLS. Caps have had 3 of them. It's a pretty good record.
Yeah.
And another bad weekend for Canadian men's national team injuries. Oh. And again at center back. Luc de Fougerolles left Dender's game in the 62nd minute, walking off gingerly.
It's a concussion, they say. They're not terribly worried about it. We're still 9 days away from merely announcing the team, much less playing. I think he'll be okay.
Kamal Miller, who Blake doesn't want any part of on the Canadian men's national team, nevertheless, he does play this position, and it has been ravaged by injury. He left Portland's game against Inter Miami with a hamstring issue. Was in clear pain. The Canadian men's national team is named on May 29th, a week from Friday, and I think we're 25 days away from the first game now.
I think there's a legitimate chance when the squad is named on May 29th, there will be a couple of center backs on the long list.
I thought this was the short list.
Well, it's still whatever. I think it's 26 names or something like that. So it's still, you're allowed to substitute. I think there's going to be a couple of center back names that you're like, I'm sorry, what? Who's that guy? You're going to have to Google. Like they're expecting to name 5 center backs, so that's a big roster that you're naming.
I think you have some Canadians who will be Googling these names anyway.
Potentially.
Sports Business Journal reporting the Pacific Northwest is, quote, a likely addition to the 2028 PGA Tour with Sahali Country Club mentioned as a potential host. We've been telling you about this. New tour CEO Brian Rolap has put his stake in the ground on 2 principles for the new PGA Tour as he envisions it. One is scarcity. He's looking to do fewer tournaments or smaller fields going forward so the best players in the world play against each other more often. And second, he's looking to go into major markets that currently don't have tournaments. And Blake and I have been through this on the PGA Tour schedule. Look, unless you count the Travelers in Connecticut, New York City does not have an annual event. Unless you count the Travelers in Connecticut, Boston does not have an annual event. Chicago does not have an annual event. Seattle, Denver, St. Louis, Kansas City. Like, you can go down the list of the biggest media markets in the United States, and half of them do not have PGA Tour events. Not to mention, something we've been, moaning about for a long time, PGA Tour has zero presence in the Pacific Northwest. The closest tournament to anybody in the upper left-hand corner of the United States is the AT&T Pebble Beach Open in Northern California. It's got to change.
Yeah, they're going to have to make Sahali a little bit easier than they did in 1998.
Well, so Sahali, people told me that the pros have outgrown Sahali. It held the 98 PGA Championship, won by Vijay Singh.
Won by Tiger, no? Oh, that's Thursday I'm looking at. Sorry,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
There was a World Golf Championship event there in 2002. And then since then, it's been the U.S. Senior Open in 2010 and a couple of women's PGA championships in 2016 and 2024. Now, Sahali looks absolutely gorgeous on television. Like, one of the things I think Rolap and his team should be pursuing is golf courses that are visually arresting, like you have at Pebble Beach, like you have at Torrey Pines, where people just stop in Augusta and go, oh my God, look at that. Sahali has that with the huge redwoods everywhere, right?
It's
The canopy of trees. It's just an amazing visual.
It's 7,000 yards from the blacks as just the normal blacks. Never mind if they want to tweak it and make it longer for the pros. You just walk up there, you want to play at Sahali. It's 7,000 yards from the blacks. So that's pretty long.
Which is long for us, but
No, but it's long for an intensely tree-lined course. Like, this is not just your standard park. Like,
fair.
Justin Leonard's comment was, we heard there were trees. Nobody imagined there would be this many trees.
Right.
So when your tee shots are getting, like, they're not used to their tee shots getting knocked down. Like, you can have a guy 150 yards off the tee.
Hit the fairway,
Yes.
and you're not getting knocked down.
No,
we just came from a PGA Championship that was short. People talking about bomb and gouge, pitch and putt. They found a way to make it a challenging test for the PGA field. Don't tell me you can't do that at Sahali. It's an amazing golf course.
I think you probably have to.
So overdue.
You probably have to play it the first one sort of an as is and see how the pros do on it.
Hey, fair enough.
And then you may have to make it easier. You may have to make it harder. I don't know. It could go both directions. I have no idea what they would do now. 9 under only.
What did VJ win at?
9 under, but
that was a PGA Championship.
But that was 12 players broke par at a 150 player field. 12 players broke par. Wow. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know that making it harder is
you know what, Blake?
the goal here.
Here's the thing. Like, if you're roll up and you can deal with player whining, Justin Thomas trying to hit shots through California, through the big redwoods somewhere because of a wayward drive, that's not a bad visual either.
It's a new visual, too. Like, they don't play on these courses.
They don't have these things.
No.
Incidentally, Bloomberg reporting Live Golf has begun laying the groundwork for a potential U.S. bankruptcy filing if it fails to raise new funds, according to people familiar with the matter, apparently seeking $250 million of investment. And people are asking the questions, okay, Rahm was guaranteed $600 million. Does he have it all?
Yeah.
Is some of it pending? Would he be affected by a bankruptcy filing?
It's okay. Just sue Saudi Arabia? Like... By the way, but more on Sahali. It was a bit of a challenge to show it well last time because it was 1998. The technology, the cameras were massive.
You have the drones.
Nowadays, you have the drone. Like, it would show beautifully.
Over the top of the canopy?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, Brooke Henderson won the 2016 Women's PGA Championship there.
Yeah.
In a playoff. It was great theater, actually. I thought the course was unbelievable on television. And that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Looking better.
Extraordinary game one of the NBA's Eastern Conference Final, where the New York Knicks erase a 22-point deficit in the final 7 minutes and 44 seconds. They won by 11. Those of us with Knicks minus 6.5 somehow covered this game. They shot 71% to Cleveland's 22% in the final 12 minutes and change, went on a 44-11 run. ESPN Insights and Analytics, at one point their win probability was as low as 0.1%. Teams trailing by 22 points in the fourth quarter of a playoff game since 1998 were 1 win, 594 losses. And the insane part about this game is, look, team's down 20-22 at the start of the fourth quarter and goes on a little run there.
13-2 run.
You're
still 10 points back.
4.5 minutes of the quarter were played, and they were still down 22. More than a third of the quarter was played.
Yeah.
And you were down 22. They attacked James Harden.
James Harden had himself a night. If you go look, various people have posted the montage that they put on the postgame show on how just a melt of all the baskets that led them back. I am telling you, if there's a basket that isn't over top of James Harden, it's one or two. His defense, Matt, I am convinced I could play better defense than he could. I am convinced of it.
Blake, is James Harden the greatest ever loser we've seen in sports? And I mean that in terms of there is no question he is a great scorer of the basketball and has been his entire career.
But he just doesn't
He's
care
going to the
the
Hall
other way.
of Fame in terms of his ability to score.
Yeah.
Object of the game is to put the ball in the basket, and few have done it better than James Harden, either during his career or, frankly, in history. And yet, is there a single player more identified with not just not being able to win the big one, he can't win the medium one.
No. And honestly,
he's a detriment to your championship efforts, despite being one of the great scorers of all time.
And the problem for him
it's
on that,
an unbelievable dichotomy.
the problem for him is it's so abundantly clear. It's just laziness. Like he just doesn't. The care does not seem to be there. It's not like he's susceptible to X. He's susceptible to everything because he just doesn't seem to care. And maybe a performance like that, that's so clearly on him, will awaken him. Otherwise, like, I don't allow his teammates to go, like, how do we win if he's not playing D?
And I want to shout out our friends Howard Kelsey, Ron Putzi for more fantastic work and down at Kits Beach, their home turf. One of Canada's most iconic basketball spaces has a new look. The revitalized Kitsilano Beach Courts officially reopened on the weekend. This was a major renewal project supported by the Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation and the Canada One Foundation of Howard Kelsey and Ron Putzi. New hoops and backboards, resurfaced courts, vibrant new paint schemes. All of this made possible via donations to
Look
the
at the
Parks
picture.
Board.
For those of you on YouTube and such,
Yeah.
I mean, look at the backdrop as they make the announcement. Like that's an unbelievable. Like if you've been down to Venice Beach and all that sort of stuff, there's pretty cool views there. That competes. Like that's amazing.
Well, and it's an extremely high level of basketball that is played there, particularly during Kits Fest, which is the festival that Canada One Foundation puts on every August. You have had a number of professional players grow up there, Howard being one of them, Levon Kendall being another from Kitsilano. The release speaks of the Kits Beach courts in the same vein. They name-check Venice Beach and Rucker Park, Blake, in terms of public spaces for the game of basketball that serious players and aficionados of the sport want to get to at some point in their life. I took you down to Venice Beach once, I can remember years ago, watching the basketball. I used to go visit a friend who lived nearby every December. And Blake, I would usually just go and get myself a drink and sit there in the stands and watch the Venice Beach guys go. And here's the one thing I learned. Fouls do not come easy at Venice Beach. And I think they're even harder to come by at Rucker Park in New York City.
Yeah, it's half rugby, half
exactly.
half basketball.
This is terrible. The men's Grand Slam tennis season will not bring the continuation of yet another fantastic rivalry in the sport, at least not until the U.S. Open. Carlos Alcaraz has withdrawn from Wimbledon already. I mean, the French Open's about to get going. He already withdrew from that tournament. It is a wrist injury. He says he's getting better, but it's not going to allow him to compete. He even sent a very nice note to his rival, Jannik Sinner. They met in 3 of the 4 Grand Slam finals last year. That was a burgeoning number 1 versus number 2 rivalry coming off the era of the Big Three, of course. Alas, not going to see it until the U.S. Open, in a Grand Slam sense, till the U.S. Open at the earliest.
Opportunity knocks for somebody.
Felix Auger-Aliassime is the number 5 player in the world. Felix, you're going to get 2 cracks here in a field without Alcaraz, including on clay, including on grass, where, if I'm not mistaken, it's his best Grand Slam result, semifinals.
He's pretty good on both those surfaces, yeah, for sure.
Poll question results from yesterday. If the Canucks promote Manny Malhotra to head coach, should they avoid drafting his son, Caleb? Yes or no? People said
Yes.
Correct.
58.
51.3.
Whoa.
It volleyed back and forth. Thomas, yeah, this isn't minor hockey. Your dad can't coach your team. Canucks already have a major culture problem in the room. Last thing they need is some perceived favoritism by the coach towards his son.
We've talked about the favoritism angle, but I hadn't thought of it in terms of the backdrop of what they've just come through. Like, why flirt with room problems?
I talked about this yesterday. I mean, you have been a cauldron of dressing room drama.
Yeah.
John says, I say no, but it will depend on who is available. If they're the best player available, to not draft someone because it is their son is misguided. Okay, I don't want to pick on John here, but I saw a lot of, no, you hire the best coach available, you draft the best player available. What's one of the 3 words that Henrik and Daniel Sedin articulated at that press conference on Thursday?
Location.
No.
No. Wrong 3 words.
3 words. Connected, committed, purpose.
Not that connected. Too connected.
To view this as 2 independent decisions is not connected. I'm sorry. That's a simpleton's take on this. You have to understand the dynamic. Like, everything Johnson and the Twins were talking about was talking about making decisions, not just on data, but with a full think-through and understanding of the matters.
It has to be holistic. It has to be complete.
That's right. Holistic. Great word.
It's a puzzle, and you can't just take a piece from one puzzle and a piece from another puzzle and say, I've got two puzzle pieces. No, that's not the way it works.
Bassett says if the Malhotras are such high character people like everyone says, then it shouldn't matter. I hear you. But there's 22 other players in the room.
But it does. Yeah.
There are 22 other players in the room. You have to worry about them as much as you worry about the Malhotras. And Baconator says hiring Manny and drafting Caleb at number 3 in the same offseason feels like an unnecessary complication for a rebuilding team. Mm-hmm. Tough enough for a pair of NHL rookies without adding the pressure of family dynamics, especially when there are several other elite prospects available at number 3. Yep. Errors and omissions, couple. Thanks, Josh, the Zamboni guy. I had that Cavalry VFC game in Calgary. No, it was out at the LEC. And Yerke's all over me for talking about constitutionally gray non-competes. He wants to quibble with constitutionally gray, but, I know lawyers too, and that's phrases they've used with me, Yerke. I will give him this on the pedantic side. He said this wouldn't be a non-compete clause, which would typically limit what an employee could do for a competitor after employment. Bruce Cassidy is still under contract and being paid. I gather Vegas simply denied another franchise the right to tamper.
And was he the Constitution? Was he taking it up because it's charters of rights and freedoms instead, or what was he saying?
He says the hesitancy to enforce non-compete clauses isn't a constitutional thing so much as common law. Courts frown on restraints of trade and basically just find them unreasonable.
I just fell asleep in the middle of that.
Exactly. Yerke's good for that. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.